Welcome to Monolith Mondays. My name is Megan. I'm the marketing manager here at Monolith Forensics. If you haven't come to Monolith Mondays before, basically what we do is every Monday at 10 a.m. Central, somebody from our Monolith team walks through a feature or a workflow inside of Monolith just to kind of give you an idea of everything the platform can do. So today, we have our founder, Matt Danner, who's going to be walking us through the new evidence importer. So let me go ahead and bring Matt up on stage here. And while I'm doing that, if you have any questions, we will have time for Q&A. So go ahead and drop your questions in the chat or in the Q&A box, and we'll get to those questions at the end. Okay, I think I see a Matt. I see a Matt, but I don't hear a Matt.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, give me just a second here. The camera rolling. Okay, and can you see me?
Yep. Success.
Okay, great. Awesome. All right, I'll just get us started here. Just like Megan just introduced me, my name's Matt Danner. I'm the CEO of Monolith Forensics. And for today's Monolith Monday, I'm going to demonstrate our new evidence importer, which if you are a current user of Monolith, you're not going to see this feature activated yet, but we're about to enable it probably today um, after this webinar, or possibly later today or sometime tomorrow. But what I'm going to do is going to give a walkthrough, and that way we have a sort of both a live demonstration and also a video of it, so that people can go back and watch it on our YouTube channel for reference. Um, so I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and just a second here. And so you should see, I should have Monolith pulled up. You should see it in the screen right now. And what I'm going to do is just walk through the basic UI of how this importer works. It's quite a bit different from we've had some other importers in the past, and this one works quite a bit differently, just because it's much more dynamic and more robust. But basically, at its core, it's a CSV importer. So if you have a CSV file that has a list of evidence items, you can use it to import. And what we try to do with this importer, and so before I explain, let me show where it is. So if you're watching this, I'm inside of a case of Monolith right now. I'm at our evidence view. And in the top right-hand corner, you're going to see probably what you're used to, which is our download button here, which is going to download basically an export of this table. And then we also have an upload button right next to it. So if I click this upload button, we're going to see this UI view, where basically Monolith is just prompting us to select a CSV file for import. And you can see here there's a bit of a multi-step process where we're going to select our CSV file and upload it, and then we're going to map columns. Okay, then we're even going to get a preview of what the data will look like. And then once we see what the data will look like, we'll then execute the actual import process. Okay. So in order to select a CSV, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over. I have an example CSV that we're going to work with today. And I'm going to switch my screen over to that really quick, just so you can see it. And give me just a second here. And I'll probably be flipping back and forth between these. We'll just see, maybe I'll do a slightly different type of, let me do a different type of screen share here just to make this a little bit easier. Um, this might make things a little bit easier for you guys to see what I'm doing. In just a second here. And just share a portion of the screen. Okay. Okay. It'll let me log into this thing, make sure that I can actually make edits to this. Okay. All right, so what we have here is we have a pretty basic CSV. All I have here are just a few columns, just evidence number, item name, make, model, serial number, and description. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And what I want to do is I want to select the CSV and actually have it pulled up here in my list already. So in my Finder, so I'm going to just click and drag this in just so I don't have to go hunt it down in the file browser. And so I've dropped it in, and so Monolith is basically giving us a little indicator that says, "Hey, here's the CSV that you've selected." It detects that there's one row and six columns, so it's just giving you a little bit of a metadata about the file you selected. If I select another file, it doesn't add multiple files. It's just going to select. It's just going to replace this one, so it only accepts one file at a time. But basically, once you have a file selected, you can then click the next button to move on to the next screen. And from here, what you're going to see is we have this map columns section. So what we're really doing here is Monolith is reading the columns that are in that CSV spreadsheet, and it's basically asking for your help to map those columns to fields that are in Monolith. So effectively, what we're doing here is, if I hop into the same case here in a different tab, what we're effectively doing here is we're trying to use the CSV to basically do the same thing that we do when we fill out this form here. Okay. But the problem is when you upload a CSV file, Monolith needs to know, well, what columns, like what data needs to go in which field, because it doesn't necessarily know. So we're using this map columns part of the import to basically have you tell us where this data lives inside the spreadsheet so that we can map everything correctly. Now, one of the things that we've built into this is we've made some basically what we call aliases, which are baked into the importer, especially for the evidence importer. We have some aliases, some column names that we look for and try to automatically map them. So what you'll see here is that with that CSV spreadsheet, because I have certain column names, Monolith is smart enough to know automatically how to map some of these columns. It just looks for certain keywords and says, oh, okay, this is probably the description field. So we're just going to auto map that for you. So it'll do this where it'll basically look for these sort of, so if you use just basic, pretty straightforward column names in your spreadsheet, it will automatically look for those columns and map them for you. So probably, I don't know, probably 75% of the time, it'll probably get most of the columns for you right away. But basically, if you just map, if you create your template or your CSV template to just map the, create column names of the spreadsheet that generally match the column names that we use in Monolith, then it should pretty much automatically just map everything for you. So in this case, if we look at our spreadsheet again, you're going to see we have an evidence number column, an item name column, make, model, serial number, and description. And you'll notice that we don't have an evidence type column. So the evidence type didn't get selected, and we're not going to select it because there's nothing to complete here. The other thing to make note of too is this importer also supports custom fields as well. So if we look down here below description, we have in this database, we have a pin code, passcode, an IMEI field, and an OS version field. And so these three fields here in our database are custom fields. And so the importer does support them, but again, just like any other column, we have to tell Monolith like which column this custom field resolves to. Since we only have a few columns in this spreadsheet right now, it's only mapping a handful of these, including the evidence number. So what we can do is we can go ahead and go to the next preview pane, and we're going to see how Monolith, basically Monolith is going to show us what this data looks like before it imports it, and it's also going to do some validation for us. So let's see how that plays out. And also really quick in this view, another little little thing we're doing is we're giving you a preview of what the data looks like that you selected. So here under this evidence number column, it's showing us a preview of the data that's in the spreadsheet related to this column. So if you select something, it will, so if I select for evidence type, if I select item name, it's giving me a description. It's showing me an example of some of the data that's going to be imported. So it's just a little extra bit there to help you as you're selecting these columns. It gives you just a quick validation of like, hey, is this the data that I think it is? So you can just quickly see it. Right now, there's only one row in the CSV, but if we had multiple rows, you would actually see multiple examples from the data set here. I think it shows up to 3 examples so that you get an idea of, okay, what is this data that's being imported? All right, so let's take a look at the preview tab. So now we're on the preview tab. And what Monolith does here is it gives you a table that's trying to show you what this data is going to look like once it's imported. So it gives you a chance to actually review what you're importing and make sure that it maps to what you expect. The other thing it does is it actually validates the data. So if we go back to the actual evidence form, um, the one of the positives about a form like this is it forces the user to sort of select values or enter values that are validated, that match a certain type or match a certain specific value or specific set of values, so that you're getting clean data that's coming in every time someone creates this form. You also get things like required fields, right? So like this custom field called OS version has this little red asterisk because we've said when we defined this custom field, we said, no, this is required. So anytime somebody completes this form, they have to give us an operating system version. So that's part of the form validation where the user can't submit this unless they complete this field. Well, in this validation of the data, it's doing the same thing. It's going to look through all the data that's being imported from the CSV, and it's going to validate each row of data the same way that we would validate this form here as if you were filling it out directly. And so we can see here we've got some problems. We get this little alert here that's letting us know, hey, there's some errors in your data. You need to figure this out. We're only going to let you import valid rows. So you can still move forward with this import, but it's not going to import any problematic rows. It's only going to import any valid ones. So right now we have just one row and it's got a problem. So we see there's a red X here. So let's see if we can figure out what the problem is. If I hover over this red X, we're going to get basically the information that tells us what's wrong with this particular row. So it's telling us, okay, the evidence number, it's saying, okay, we're trying to import this item with evidence number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but the system is telling us that evidence number already exists. So that's our first problem. So we can't import this record because that evidence number already exists. And this is also based on a custom toggle in Monolith where you can basically set the option as to whether you want duplicate evidence numbers or not. If that option is not set, then this validation is not going to trigger. If you don't have that, if you allow duplicate evidence numbers in Monolith, then this particular validation is not going to be a problem. We also see for our OS version fields that OS version is required, but no column was mapped. So what this is telling us is, again, because we have this custom field called OS version and it's set to required, since we didn't map a field to that OS version, it's not actually importing anything. So no matter how much data we put in and no matter how good or validated it is, none of this data set is ever going to import because we don't have this OS version column mapped. So that's the first thing that we're going to have to fix is get that column version mapped, and we also have to fix the evidence number. So let's see if we can do that. Let's update the spreadsheet to add our OS version, and let's change that evidence number and see if we can get it to validate. So in my spreadsheet, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'll just make a dash here, and I'll put today's date, which is 07/13. I'm assuming we don't have an evidence number with that value, but we're about to find out. I'm also going to add an OS version column, and we'll just say 12.3. Okay, and we'll go ahead and save that, close it, and then we'll hop back over to Monolith. We'll cancel this. We'll start the import process over again. I'll drop in my updated CSV file. Click next, and so this time we have our evidence number. We can see it's a different value this time. And we also have our OS version. So again, I labeled that column the same name as the custom field, and Monolith was smart enough to just automatically map it for us because it knows to look for columns with this custom field name. Now, if it's not this name, not a big deal. If it doesn't auto map or whatever, if the column has a different name, that's fine. We can just select the column that maps that custom field. And so I can click next now. And now, this time around, since we fixed that data set, since we fixed those problems, this data can now be imported into Monolith. And so we see that the evidence number is no longer highlighted in red, so we know it's not a problem. We also get a big green check mark. We don't have an alert that's telling us there's problems here. We can see that we have one valid and one of one selected for import. So the system also allows us to select specific items that we want to import. So if there's only specific records that we want to import, we can. Here we only have one record in the spreadsheet, so that's all we're going to import. So I'm going to just select everything. We also have a filter here too. So if you're importing a lot of records here, we have a simple filter here where you can filter on status. So if you only want to see, valid items or invalid items, you can filter those down. So if you're going through the validation and trying to see, what rows have issues or whatever, you can add the status filter to quickly filter through these items. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and import this one item and we'll see what the result looks like. Okay, so it's already imported. It was very quick. It was just one item. It's just the same as basically filling out this form and submitting the create evidence form. And we can see we get a nice little report here where we can see one item was imported successfully. And we also get a nice report that we can download. So this report basically just tells us, gives us a report of the results. So this can be really useful if you go through the import. If there's ever an error with one of the imports, let's say even after the validation, there's still some kind of error or issue with one of the imports. If one of the records doesn't import correctly, that will be in this download report. This download report will also contain, let's say that you imported a CSV with a lot of evidence items and like 6 or 7 of those items were invalid, but you went ahead and imported all the successful ones. It'll give you that report that'll show you, problematic issues. Okay, so you can download that and look at it. We can close this import, and now we can see here's that evidence item that we just imported. We can see all of its details that were imported from the spreadsheet. Okay, so with that, let's see if we can add an extra value to our evidence importer. And also let's take a look again at let's go through that import process again. And let's see if we can add some additional data sets here. So if we look at some values that are missing, okay, we need our evidence type, right? So let's see if we can add a type field. So I'm going to insert a value. I'm going to call it type. Here, I'll just say smartphone. I'm going to add another item. I'm going to leave the evidence number blank this time because if you remember, this is just like filling out the evidence form. So if the evidence number is blank, Monolith is just going to assign an evidence number for us once we create it. Here, I'm going to call this one a desk. We'll call this one a laptop. And we'll say this is an Apple MacBook Pro. Make is Apple. Model is, I don't know, something like that. We'll give it some serial number. We'll say this is a laptop used by the subject of this case. And then OS version, we'll just say 15.4. Okay. So if we save that, the only thing that's different here is we didn't add a notice number and we added this type column. So let's see if that maps correctly the way we expect. So I'm going to cancel out of this, start the import over again, drop this file in, click next. Okay, great. So we got our type column mapped automatically for us, which is great. We got our OS version mapped. So let's see what this new data set looks like. You also notice too, we've got like 2 sets of data now. Because we have 2 rows in the CSV, we actually now see more previous sets here. So we can see, basically spot check this stuff and make sure it matches up with what we expect. Okay, we can click next, and now we can see that we have 2 records in our preview set. And what Monolith has done here, now you'll notice this first one is erroring out because we already imported it. So the evidence number already exists in Monolith. So it's just erroring out on the evidence number duplication, just fine. And now that we have multiple records, what Monolith does is it just automatically selects any successfully validated records, any records that are good to import. It just puts the selection state into a state where it's selecting any valid records for us automatically. So by doing this, it'll just skip over any of these broken records. And then when you do that, when you finish the import process, you can then download that report and it will show you, it'll give you a list of successfully imported items and in items that were skipped over so that you have a report of how the import actually completed. So here we have our evidence type, which the way that the evidence type mapping works is if you think about evidence types in Monolith, you have these predefined evidence types, right? So, and these are customized by you and your team. So when we go through the import process, when you are mapping a field like evidence type or any other field that has a predefined selection of options, Monolith is part of the validation process. It's going to make sure that this value, whatever it is in the spreadsheet, matches one of the values that's in this dropdown. So that's going to prevent someone from just having some wacky, nonsensical value here that doesn't map to one of these options that your team has defined. And if it's not there, it's either going to, I can test this. I can't remember if it will error out or if it'll just skip the value. It might just skip the value. But the point is, it's not going to import an evidence type that does not exist in Monolith. So that's part of the validation process that's going to go through. So again, we can import this, which we've already done. Um, but what I want to do is just kind of keep showing the different ways that this importer works. So if we go back to our column mapper, if we look at some other columns here, we also have a size and size unit column, which works in a kind of interesting way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a size column to our spreadsheet. I'll just add it right here, say insert, say size. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to insert, we're going to say 128 gigabytes. And here I'm going to say 512 gigabytes. And one of the things that we've done with this size column is we've made it, again, we've tried to make it kind of smart to where it kind of understands that size columns can be this sort of dynamic column that has two pieces of information in it. So you can see here, it's automatically found that size column and mapped the size here. But we can also, under size unit, we can select that same column again. And Monolith is smart enough to know how to extract numerical values and unit values from these columns. So if we go and look at next, what you're going to see is it smartly already knew how to extract the value from that column. So even though this value is 128 GB or 512 GB, the importer is smart enough for the evidence items, is smart enough to know that this size column can be a dynamic column. This size column can either be a number or it could be a number plus a unit. So it's smart enough to know that. Same thing with the size unit column. The size unit column is smart enough to know that if I select a column, it's possible that column is a combination of a numerical value and its unit value. So the importer just knows how to parse out that value and split it up correctly. So if you're using in your spreadsheet, your importer, if you're using just semantically correct sizing like this, where you have a numerical value and a unit value, the importer for the evidence importer is smart enough to know how to parse that out correctly. And we get these clean sizes here that will import nicely for us. So same thing with, and basically you just repeat this to infinity until you have all the columns that you want mapped. And this is how you can sort of create your own import template. It's really simple. We thought about creating a template to provide it, but really it's dead simple. You just create all the columns that basically map to, you open up your evidence form here, you just create the columns in the spreadsheet that map to these fields, and it will handle it for you. Now, one caveat here is that we currently aren't mapping the linked contact field just yet. We're not mapping the linked contact field, and we're not mapping chain of custody. So right now, the importer will not automatically select contacts for you, and it will not create chain of custody details for you. And part of the reason we do that is because the way chain of custody works, we just want to make sure that it's done right, and also because it can accept digital signatures. So we want to make sure that we're not, introducing an import function that may erroneously import chain of custody details. We want this to be relatively real-time chain of custody import or chain of custody creation. So we're leaving this off the importer for now. Maybe once we get some feedback, maybe we'll find a way to import it. But for right now, we're making this to where you still have to fill out this portion of the form. But basically, to create your own import template, you just create a spreadsheet and add columns that map to each of these column values. And that's all you have to do, even for custom fields. So you have two custom fields here. For all your custom fields, just create a column that matches the name of the custom field that you created. And Monolith will automatically map this stuff for you when you're going through the import. And like I said, even if you don't cleanly name your custom fields in the template, that's fine. You just come in and you just select the value or select the column with the data that maps to that custom field. And this is really important because this can also be a situation where, let's say that you get, um, could be a scenario where you get a spreadsheet from somebody else, a spreadsheet of items that another entity has created that has no idea you have this import function. Well, that's great. You can still import it. And then if the column names don't cleanly match the column names in Monolith, that's okay. You can just go through and select the columns that make sense manually and then import basically any spreadsheet of evidence items that you have. Okay. So that's pretty much it. That's how it works for the evidence importer. This will be out very soon. The last thing I'll say too is we put a lot of work into this to make basically what I would consider a more generic importer that we then can build on top of. So this was our first foray into this, where this style of import, you will see this for other types of data. So, for example, we have an acquisition importer in the works right now that basically does the same thing as this evidence importer. And it's the same process, the same methodology. The only difference is instead of it being these evidence fields here that are getting mapped in the importer, it's going to be these acquisition fields instead. And that way you can do a bulk import of acquisitions from a CSV. And it'll be smart enough to know, it's smart enough to know how to map them back to the right evidence numbers and evidence items and all that stuff. So it's going to be a very useful importer so that you can import a lot of data very quickly. And we plan on adding this to other sections of Monolith too, like storage items, analysis, and other areas where you're trying to document different types of records within Monolith. But that's it. So thanks for joining. This is being recorded. This will be up on our YouTube channel before long, so it'll be there for reference. And like I said, we're going to activate. This feature is actually already active in Monolith right now. We just haven't turned it on for anybody. We've got it feature flagged right now, so we can do some testing. But basically, we'll just flip the switch here pretty soon, so that it'll be available. And the way to find it is you just look for it right here in this little import section. And the other thing too is this is from within a case, but you can theoretically still do this from you can do this from the master evidence section. The only difference is there is going to be an extra field that gets mapped, which is the case number field. So that's the only difference. So you can, if you have a lot of evidence items that are in a spreadsheet that map across multiple cases, you can still import those. The difference is you have to have a case number column to map to. And those case numbers need to match actual case numbers that are in Monolith for you so that Monolith knows where to put those evidence items. But the process is exactly the same. It's just you just need a case number value. That's all. Okay. Well, that's it. That's all I got for today. Thanks everybody for joining. Hopefully, this will be a useful feature once it's out. And once it does come out and you guys test it, please give us some feedback. Let us know how it's working or if you run into any issues or anything. And that's all I have for today.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. We'll give it just 30 seconds or so if anybody has questions. I don't see any yet. Otherwise, ready to go.
Okay.
Testing how fast people can type if they have questions.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Looks like there aren't any questions. Thanks everybody for joining today. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, with another Monolith Monday. So hope to see you guys there. Have a great rest of your week in the meantime.